hear from our experts at the panel discussion up next on how you're going to do that. All right. So to wrap up today's session, let us discuss some of the challenges in utilizing that customer data and how companies can benefit from the information to help enhance their customer experience in the future. This panel discussion on how data brings value to customers' experience will be moderated by Maslina Mokhtar. In case you missed the introduction earlier, Maslina is the client partner of brand guidance and customer experience for Kantar, Malaysia. Our first guest of this panel is Sailesh Wadhwa, who is the Chief Strategist at Edelman, Malaysia. Credited with bringing home Asia's first ever global Effie, Sailesh has spent the last 17 years across multiple geographic locations such as Kuala Lumpur, Colombo, Mumbai, New Delhi, working across brand consulting and communication marketing businesses. His strategic work for clients has helped win over 125 Specialist Marketing and Creative Effectiveness Awards at various regional stages in recent years. Our second guest is the Senior Marketing Manager of C Gamer Mall, a global online game e-commerce with 10.2 million total active users. Raymond Fu leads the marketing outreach and engagement initiatives, focusing on growing the business via a highly efficient bottom funnel strategy. Winning the Best in Brand at SOBA 2021, Raymond has further strengthened C Gamer Mall's presence in the consumer's mind. Our third guest of this panel is dialing in live from Singapore. Sathish Sanmugavelu leads the C sales team across Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. He partners closely with marketers and agency partners across these markets for the last 10 years, strategically growing these partnerships. He showcases how Teads leads the way to innovating new media solutions in the field of data and analytics. His key objective this year is to ensure he helps brands future-proof their plans to effectively work in the cookieless area. We are also very honored to have Teads on board as our Tech Trooper sponsor. This is definitely a great panel discussion that you don't want to miss. I don't want to miss it either. So if you have any questions for the panel, you know the drill. Post it in the chat box or in the comment section, and we will get right with you. All right, so let us quickly check up on our panelists and make sure they're gearing up, and we'll be right back with you. Bye.
Thank you, Myra. That was a wonderful introduction to our panelists today. I think we're very excited to be here. There's going to be some really heated discussion, hopefully. So please, as Myra said, if you have any question while we're discussing and also posting our topics today, box, and then we'll pick up as we are discussing. And also, if there's any other added information, of course, you can reach out to your panelists the day today, and then we can pick it up after the conference itself. So, welcome everyone. Thank you, Raymond. Raymond's here with me in the studio, so it's nice to have it. And in the middle, we have Sailesh as well as Sathish.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello, guys. Nice to
Hi,
see you.
good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome. So, we had a chance to get to know each other a bit before the session, and we are all very, very excited, definitely. So a bit in terms of how we're going to start the session, we're going to be having some questions that we had actually brainstormed earlier, and we want to see how that actually apply to some of the businesses that's happening in Malaysia as well as in Southeast Asia, right? For that, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the team that is actually who online. So that will be Sailesh first, followed by Sathish, in terms of like some of the questions, and then Raymond will close up the discussion. But the first one that we are going to cover today is actually around like in terms of like the information, the customer data that you have currently, right? How are your business utilizing it and also making sure that you are getting to the right information all the time? Let me get Sailesh to like pipe in now.
Thanks for that question. I think icebreakers are always a tough one, but let me try. I think there's no denial that most business decisions are today informed by data and analytics, irrespective of what communication stream we are in. And at Edelman, I can speak from a perspective of how we use data in multiple ways. I'm sure most of us would have heard of Edelman's Trust Barometer. It's a study that we've been doing year after year globally as well as in Malaysia. And that is a first level data that comes to us in terms of the overall citizen sentiment and how that impacts reputation and trust aspects for businesses, for government institutions, and even media platforms. And I think increasingly we've seen year after year, clients have shown active interest in leveraging that data in multiple ways. And I'll probably look at few examples here. Being in the reputation business, we use that data on platforms where you're doing executive leadership aspects. LinkedIn marketing is becoming big, and reputations of the companies where industry captains are taking the lead. Being informed with data helps take the right content decisions. At the same time, more importantly for brands and companies, we all live in this age of social, and we're just a minute away from the next potential crisis, and we've seen multiple ones that happen. I think a preemptive and a proactive approach, leveraging data to take informed decisions and active social monitoring and scraping helps clients, brands, and businesses pivot at important junctures. And we've seen, coming out of pandemic, there has been a heightened interest and discussions around this. And then there are many other ways, when it comes to consumer marketing, how people are taking decisions around that as well. But top of the mind, I thought these are the ones that are pertinent to this discussion that we are having from a business, how data connects to shaping business outcomes and decision making.
Have you seen like a lot more decision making using this tool with your client as well as within your business in the last few years?
In fact, like I said, coming out of pandemic, we've seen a lot of these discussions happening. They are happening at different levels within the boardroom, during marketing meetings and other things. And in fact, it's encouraging to see that clients are actively investing in building data sets and harvesting them. And we've seen that being deployed both in the body of work that we do, as well as the overall industry itself. So last 2 years, there is a lot of awareness to action around data itself from a decision-making perspective.
And what about you, Sathish? Do you see similar trends in the line of work that you do?
Yeah, 100%. So good afternoon again to the panelists and whoever's now watching it online as well. So when you talk about data effectiveness or utilization from a Teads perspective, like we are an edtech company. So, we are naturally experienced in processing and analyzing data. But what we would like to also separate, like right from the start, is data that we use for like our advertiser campaigns, our programmatic campaigns, for example, that is typically not accessed by a lot of individual teams, except when they look at post-campaign data and so on. And also information and data that we use in-house as a company to build our business strategies and to help our employees themselves. So there's two different buckets when you look at these type of data streams and how we utilize them and use them. So in the first case, like we do have a tech team based in Montpellier, France, that kind of monitors and analyzes immense volume of data from publishers all over the world, because that's the business that we are in, working with our publisher partners and connecting them with our advertisers as well. So this is like big data, and basically this is what that empowers Teads, like AI-based kind of solutions that we offer to some of our advertising partners. For example, advertisers would only end up paying when a video completes to an end of the user, only after the click is registered, or only after a visit is recorded. So that's all the data that happens on advertiser level, on the campaign level, in a sense. On the other hand, the second part is the data that we use in-house. So we do have a lot of resources or platforms that we have internally as well that empower ourselves and our employees. So Stylish talked about, like, during the pandemic, there's a lot of disruption as well to how we were running our business. So right at the start, we were on lockdown. We could not go to the office or have easier sharing of information with our colleagues, subordinates, our managers, so on and so forth. We were trying to jump on as many video calls as we could, or sharing Google Docs here and there to get the information across. So that was like an information store that was happening. So one example that we had, like at that point in time, we had introduced something called a knowledge base. It's like an information sharing platform or a tool internally, which kind of reduced the friction and kind of made it easier for all of us to access relevant information quicker, faster, in a more efficient manner. Beyond that, we also had a new onboarding process. I think different companies also had troubles with onboarding as well. We actually started this pre-pandemic, but it was kind of half-half. But during the lockdown, it's mandatory 100% adoption, what's happening online. So that's where we had a lot of information sharing, different data points within the company, so newcomers could have a holistic understanding of where the business was. We had little training videos, we had quizzes and tests that we had as well. So our new employees could earn badges from the different departments of the businesses and put it within their profile. In addition, we also have multitude of data monitoring tools that helps us internally as well. So a different dashboard that we look at business growth, solutions adoption, insights of the infantry partners that we have. Of course, our client advertising campaigns as well, different business trends. So in all, for a company, even though we're quite small in stature, but we are growing rapidly. So it is crucial for us to how we manage and utilize data that we have internally for us to use. The idea is, even though having the data, that's not the difficult part. The more stress comes in how you study the data and you make it actionable, or to make it accessible easily, but everyone within the business as well. And also externally too, we also have platforms like Teads Manager that helps our clients to use these data easily, and also for their campaign needs or whatever they need to achieve.
I see. Thank you very much, Sathish. I think interesting, there were 2 points that you brought up around the fact that internally you're using it for the onboarding and all that. I think we'll circle back to that in a minute. What we want to hear also is from Raymond in terms of your organization. How does that look like?
For CKM more, actually, I will come from the angle more on implementation. Yeah, because this is what we've been doing all this while. So for us, because our business is an online e-commerce, so data for us is very important. Yeah, that's coming in the first place. So we have a two angle for data. So internal or external data. So for internal data, we study our stock, our product information, and then our customer purchase behavior, and also our sales performance. And then for external wise, we are going to the party tools Google Analytics. We see the traffic, so how the user traffic, what's their when they are coming in, when they're going out, from what countries, and also we go for Google queries. So we check on the what is the most interesting topic that people are talking about on internet. So that we can leverage on those information, and then how we could apply in our marketing calendar. Yeah. And also because we also very heavy rely on the advertising. So for instance, the Google advertisement. So I think I could very proud of this part. Yeah, because we've been going through all this information data from various platforms. Then we do some analysis, we try to understand it. So for my marketing department, so we are very focusing on this bottom funnel strategy. So how we harvest the user, how we convert them into sales. That's our my strength, I would say. Okay, yeah. So throughout the information we have, so we able to advertise the right keywords. We are able to provide the right caption on the ad asset, and then able to capture the what you call that is the from the angle of the user query intention. Yeah. So because usually gamers, they want to purchase some of the game credits, so they will do the research, they will start to inquiry on internet. So that's where we come in to capture that. Yeah. So because throughout all these various of information, data, and also our internet analysis, so we're able to we're very proud of our ROAS, return on ad spend, is 1 equal to 60 last year. Yeah.
I see. And how do you actually like see that sales performance in line with all your internal data information? How do you make sure that it gives you exactly what you need, aside from the, you know, your partners with the Google Analytics and all that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. This is also just recently I come to this part. We my boss called this what you call that, our marketing realization rate. Yeah. So how we realize realize all our marketing effort into the real dollar and cents. So after some study, in fact, I try to streamline a bit so that we the whole department or whole company able to easier to understand, to follow. So I streamline to user traffic equal to our sales performance. Yeah.
Thank you, Raymond. I think that was a really interesting application of how that's going to be used. Sathish earlier mentioned that because of the pandemic, we had to do some onboarding online, right? Do you also experience something similar during the pandemic?
Yeah, in fact, that's the new reality. It's not just pandemic. I think the after effects of pandemic, where we keep hearing about the terms like hybrid work environments, and it's going to be an increasingly interesting one. And I'll not name a client, but we've actually did an employee engagement engagement for almost a month with them for their global operations across 4 different continents to launch a new internal culture itself, which mandated voluntary engagement with people. And imagine doing it over a month using just mobile phones. And I think that got everybody encouraged to say that yes, it can be done. It doesn't necessarily need to be the boring town halls and stuff, but employees logging in at their own will, at their own time, participating in group activities and doing things, and how real-time analysis of that data helps us create newer content that is more call for action for them. And I think these kind of things you would see increasingly being used across. In fact, at Edelman itself, we've been doing this under our Live Well initiative, which is a global platform for all of us on workplace. And primarily the intention is that how do you rally people around various aspects. So not just for pure play consumer marketing programs, but even employee engagement and experience is something that is becoming a big ask across organizations to stay connected, well-oiled, and data plays a big role. But again, our view on data has been that it's an enabler, it's not the end all. And a lot of times, data intimidates a lot of people, and there's a lot of inaction around it. I think if we were to just simplify and look at behavior, whether it's consumer or employee, I think we can come out with something really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It can be quite intimidating, I must say, and especially with the pivot that everyone had to do in the last 2 years, everything going digital and all that, that has posed some really critical question to some businesses if they are actually ready for the next stage of this digital transformation, right? So actually that would come to our next question that we will be discussing today. There are going to be a lot of challenges. I know for a fact that in Kantar, we felt that even with this onboarding process, client engagement and all that, it does help us all become a lot more productive, right? Because of course, some common elements like commute alone, right? I mean, if you're in KL, obviously, we all don't miss that traffic jam that we've seen in the last few months. But challenges is there, right? I think, Sathish, like, what about like the challenges for businesses when it comes to actually adopting this platform, digital and e-commerce into their system, making sure that they are utilizing all the internal information they have? How do you see the clients of yours handling it? Is it difficult? Is it for some of them something that is naturally occurring because it's forced upon them? How does it look from your side of the business?
Yeah, for sure. Like the pandemic and the lockdown, like really pushed forward the trajectory that was in for like these kind of platforms and adoption. So it was like a little silver lining that was in place for companies that were onboarding new platforms and new data integrations that they wanted to try. But we don't want it to like just stop there. Like it needs to help them to move their business needle or their business growth to the next level. So whenever it comes to like new implementation of platforms or new technology, there's meant to be inertia. Like naturally, there would be a little bit of hesitance or a bit of fear because that's natural human behavior anyway, because you're just used to a routine of how you've been doing these things. So the bigger question is like, if you have a new platform, a new solution, is to study like how it would actually fit into an existing style or existing platform that your employees or even your clients or your partners are already using. So it does not like disrupt a flow, but also with education and evangelization, it helps in improving their work experience rather than being a particular blocker. So like one example is like we were talking about cookieless future and third-party data depreciation and so on in the past 6 months. So we have kind of invested quite some time in the tech team in Malaysia. So we kind of launched some new multiple cookieless solutions or targeting solutions, and also introduced a first-to-market cookieless translator to help certain advertisers. And it sits within our Teads ad manager. So again, when we have this kind of approach, the main or new ideas or new platforms, the main goal is to have like operational system set up and a smooth rolling between collaboration internally and externally as well. Because a lot of the times the product team or the ops team, it's kind of behind the scenes doing all the tech stuff, and you will have your salespeople or your business people who are kind of the face of the company who are going to push this product externally. So if there's no like close collaboration or unison between the teams, then you will find friction between the company growth plans anyway. So the main goal here is to get like everybody involved into a certain project with a particular like linear path when everybody is going towards with a combined like goal and idea. And that's where we can see the adoption of new tools or new platforms being a lot more prevalent rather than test one, try it for a week, and then forget about it. So it's more of the sustainability of these platforms that we see that's keen in the industry.
Thank you for that. I think definitely true that in terms of some of this adoption, it's something that is work in progress for all of us, right? So everyone's getting used to it. But for you, Raymond, in your business, I mean, it's something that you started out with. How did the last 2 years change in terms of your business, and has it actually made it easier in a sense? Or is there some challenges that we don't know about yet because we are like probably a few steps behind you guys?
Yeah, definitely there's some challenges, especially these 2 years. Like just now, one of the panelists mentioned about the cookies, because Google is going to what I call that, cut off all these third-party cookies next year. So it could be like affect us a lot. But something is already happened. Like recently the Apple iOS. So because due to the data privacy, Facebook ads is no longer able to it's not saying no longer, but they have restrictions to access the user from iOS. Yeah, this like heavily affected our advertising. Yeah, because we have lesser channel to reach out to the audience. So this could impact our sales performance. And then secondly, is something that we can't even predict that, which is the geopolitical issue, like the Russia and Ukraine, the war, because we never predict of this. So like it affected like our payment facility affected. Yeah, we in a suspended already, and then also Google ads. So and also Facebook ads, they are not allowed to advertise in Russia country. So we like kind of lost one of the revenue resources from this region. Yeah, it's quite challenging, honestly.
I see. Interesting. Because a lot of people don't think that something like that is happening in Ukraine is going to impact us here in Malaysia, right? But listening to you,
yeah.
it is something that is actually nearer than we thought. Sathish, what do you think? We see the challenges. We're going cookieless. Now, where would that sit with the businesses in Malaysia, you think, in the next few years?
Yeah, I think there's been a chatter around, as Sathish mentioned. It's been there for more than a year now, where there've been the over dependency on this thing, and I think people. I would rather focus on how people are looking at getting around this, more so from a perspective of voluntary disclosure of data, and how content as a stream is picking up across, and we've seen the realization across industries, where whether you are a banking financial institution, a telco, or even for that matter, a utilities company like a fuel company, everybody is largely investing in content as a strategy, where you would, if you value something and you want to follow that, and it's very similar to how we normally talk in marketing about influencer, right? I like what he or she does. Similarly, companies are investing, consultancies are investing in huge amount of data, where that data is being harvested through aspect of consumers willing to subscribe to a white paper or a video stream or a podcast, and that it's sharply defined, it's already cleaned up. And I think those are the kind of strategies that you would see more and more being deployed, which we are talking with our set of clients on how this can be implemented, and some of them have seen encouraging responses when it comes to this kind of approach itself. When it comes to e-commerce, of course, there are other interesting perspectives that we have seen, where you would then lean in on what we call influencer-led commerce aspect, the social commerce. Again, to us, we see influencers as storytellers and content, and I think you would deploy and harness them in different ways to reach out to the audience and the target audiences. Because let's accept it, one of the joke that goes around is that you cannot outsmart the algorithm, and there's no point in trying to debate around that, because if the platforms will bring something today, you outsmart it, tomorrow they'll bring something else. So we'll need to find other ways, and primarily that's what we've been doing at Edelman, working closely with our clients on that.
Thank you, Sathish. I think for Raymond and team, I'm sure they're going to find a way around those cookie and all the ban and exception, right? So we look forward to that. Knowing how powerful these tools are, and of course, we all seated with a lot of information about our clients, our partners, and all that, and not everyone's utilizing it as we know it, right? I mean, what would be if you have to tell your clients, example, Sathish, the kind of benefits that they can gain if they were to get on board faster, for example. I mean, they're getting on board, but sometimes, it takes a while to convince them, right? So how would you say the key benefits are going to actually bring them the right revenue and profitability in the future?
Well, it depends what the business objectives are and how they are planning against audience and data that they want to reach and achieve at the end of the day. Again, like Raymond was talking about, removal of mobile IDs, different type of identifiers. So as the industry is getting more vogue, or user privacy is being talked about a lot and more, content is key. Like what Sathish was saying, content is really going to be really important. That's where you can make sure your audience is consuming the type of content that you're pushing them towards, and that's where you can have the brand association, your product placements, like all in place. Beyond that, like publishers themselves or Teads themselves, like we can also be some sort of data providers of sorts as well. Like a lot of publishers hold a lot of data from their readership. Some of them do monetize this data as well. So we don't, I mean, Teads, in our perspective, we don't monetize that data or collect as much user data as possible. But we do have a unique understanding of how user behavior is online when they're reading content. Similar to how like Google knows what people are searching and Facebook Meta know what people like and share. So we do know what people read online. So another one of the tools that we have is a media barometer. Basically, what this helps us with is we can see different reading behavior of different audiences in Malaysia over time by gender or by age or by interest or intent, or how they are moving between publishers, what location that they are, what device that they're using. So all these different data signals like will help us like overcome like the depreciation of third-party cookies or like identifiers in the future. We'll talk about AI next soon as well. So here the main goal is like when we kind of have less dependency on these identifiers that are sooner going to be depreciated from the industry, like entirely. What are the other avenues that we can touch and read upon? So again, like with ourselves, I mean, with our typical like post-campaign data that we share back with advertisers, and advertisers can see basically what type of content that your particular audience that are reading. So that's what we want to showcase beyond pure metrics of the campaign. We want to give an inner perspective of who their audiences are, what type of content that they're reading, what type of publishers they're on, which type of the day, what device, what mobile, what OS that they're using. So just looking at a whole perspective and a whole scope of your audience and give a lot more data back to the advertiser for them to like plan a strategy for their campaign needs or for their product sales projections.
Definitely, Sathish. I think that's an interesting one. Like you said, we'll cover that a bit in terms of our next discussion topic. But before we go there, I think Raymond, for us, you're probably a much more avid user of the recommender engine, right? Because it's part and parcel of your sales journey. So tell us a bit about that benefit you guys are gaining from that aspect. Because for us, a lot of the time, we are also a partner to the client who's actually trying to adopt the, different end-to-end journey when it comes to purchase and also customer experience. So you are actually using it for your sales, for your customer experience. How does that look like in terms of benefit for you?
Of course, actually, our business cannot live without that, I would say. Okay, first of all, I think Google has dominated the most search in the market right now. I think 90%. So we heavily rely on it. Because of Google provide the so-called the convenience to us. So like for instance, because our business is like is a global business. So if it's not working in Russia, then we move to other country. We can So in order to go into the new market, right? We really need all this data to provide us the insight. Like we need to study, what is the top direct games in this country, and how much user they have in this country, and then what is their spending pattern looks like. So in order for us to craft our marketing campaign, so in order we need to come into more content, or we should do awareness via some display advertisement, or we should like go into like provide some discount because they're very price sensitive. So it's really help us to really craft a very accurate campaign. So one of the case study which has happened like 2020. Yeah, 2020 when is the pandemic just started. Okay. Of course, I wouldn't go into the pandemic that year because there's a lot of uncertainty. Okay. Yeah, we still adapting. Okay. Okay. 2020. Because throughout all this study with all this data, and we all put in together, and the result is very good. That year we like able to get a 2-digit growth. Yeah. But somehow the real implementation behind actually is we have did a lot of trial and error. Yeah. We do a lot of so-called people very popular right now. They call A/B test, but actually we more than A/B, we A, B, C, D, E, F maybe. Yeah. We had to did a lot of testing. And then I wouldn't say a single source of data or single source of platform will provide me the entire holistic solution, but it does require just now I mentioned earlier, so the internal data and external data that we rely on. So in come together, we do a lot of testing. So this happened. Yeah.
Sathish, what do you think of that? Because you mentioned earlier, like we cannot beat that AI at the end of the day, right? It's like something, an algorithm, much more brain power than we have as human collectively in one place. I mean, it's not that we are not as intelligent, but yeah.
No, I think there's no denying that there are going to be ways around it. I think the fundamental principle that we follow and look at is that a platform mimics the behavior of its audiences. So irrespective of whether you take a TikTok or a Facebook or whatever, I think understanding audience profile better helps and why they are there. Whether it's an e-commerce platform or whether it's a content engine. I think that is critical, and a lot of time, we're trying to outsmart the end result without actually spending time on audience intelligence, and that's where real content creation and engagement happens. And I think often our discussions revolve around that in terms of are we doing the right targeting when you talk about A/B testing or ABCDEF. I think it's always a trial and error. It's a learning approach. It's what a machine learning is akin to as against when you have human intelligence and then combine it with an I think you get better impact. And often we want to relegate it to the platform or the algorithm. I think that's where we are trying to create that awareness. I think a lot of seasoned marketeers understand and appreciate that, and a considerable amount of time is spent. I'll say that when we look at even online consumer forums and behavior, whether it's through active social listening or audience profiling through various, say, online consumer surveys with XYZ platforms. I think Kantar does it, and others also do that. I think that is where the good starting point for us to build that engagement is. And of course, then it gets further enhanced, as Raymond mentioned and Sathish mentioned, embellished with the technical superiority of how we are going to deliver home an action or a message. And I think that's where a lot of work should happen as against at the last mile itself.
Thank you, Sathish. I think in my earlier session as well, we said like at the end of the day, an AI partner alone is not sufficient because at the end of the day, it's a tool, right? So you do need partners to be able to like interpret that, right? Even for you, like as much as the tool is really critical, you do need like someone to like put together the information, right?
Data is just piece of information. So it depends on the brain behind how we analyze it, how to use our experience to do all this study.
Thank you. I think that has been quite interesting. But what we actually are keen to know today, right? And I'm gonna like open the floor to any one of you to answer first. Not that there's any prize, but where do you think for the businesses, especially in Malaysia and Southeast Asia, right? When we look at the businesses here, with the growing interest in terms of AI and machine learning, and a lot of those decisions that has to be made by the businesses in half the time that we have, like, where does this AI play a part in terms of the businesses around us? And how soon do you think they need to get on board?
I think it's a big crystal ball gazing question that you have posed here. My simple perspective, again, looking at how pandemic has accelerated, as Sathish was mentioning, the whole adoption across businesses. I think AI would play a role, and again, it's out there for discussion, but from where we sit and see, I think it's not a decision-making tool or an enabler. I think it's an efficiency model. So if you look at today AI deployment across various digital journeys in different organizations, whether it's a marketing function or a production function, I think AI plays a role in building efficiency. And I'll go back to a very interesting definition that stands out on AI or perspective from one of our big clients, which is Microsoft. AI is helping you free up time to harness your human ingenuity as against it becoming the sole driver. So coming back to your question, I think where we see, at least in the marketing function of things, AI would play a role in taking the guesswork out of the whole aspect. But at the same time, it needs to be, like we spoke in the last section, it needs to be working in tandem with how we make decisions. That's probably the perspective that I have at this point in time. Happy to hear more.
What about you, Sathish?
Yeah, for us, like the AI debate, when we look at like audience segmentation, is actually to see how AI or machine learning augmented data like helps with personalized advertising or personalized messaging without any identifiers. So, I mean, we talked about mobile IDs, we talked about cookies and so on, but how is like AI or machine learning going to help us to close that gap, and where the gaps has already kind of reduced and where there's more space for AI to continue growing and replace IDs or the dependency on IDs entirely. So there are already different tech players in the market that can use different predictive patterns without depending on identifiers to look at certain audiences and how they might fit into age, gender, or interest category groups far better than cookie-based segments or particular identifiers that they are in place. So we also believe in that as well. Like that's our trajectory in terms of our data plan. We are going in so far as planning that, without using any IDs, like we can make real-time predictions and not even collecting that particular user data. And this ensures that our plan or solutions could be sustainable. Because, we are talking about these IDs and cookies, like in another 2 years and another 5 years, there could be no more IDs or no more third-party segments for that clients have or advertisers have been dependent on for the past 10, 15 years, for example, and kind of horn that audiences all the way. But it doesn't mean that we don't look at certain data segments. Like we do look at data points. For example, we talked about cookieless. We still look at the IP address. We still look at the location, the device, and so on and so forth. But those are signals that are used real time in that particular ad call or auction level. We don't collect or keep that data like for the future targeting in that sense. As you know, I think probably less than 20% of iOS users in Malaysia now are allowing IDFAs or cross-app tracking that's already in place. So sooner and sooner, like we'll start losing a lot more of these stickiness or fingerprinting that's happening of our audiences. Like Raymond was talking about iOS and Apple. So like it's a perfect example. Like Apple is really positioned themselves as like a privacy champion, and people really follow that train of thought. And we know that users don't mind ad-supported content. Like if they find the value exchange to access quality content, they are fine with ads being there. Like video or video or audio streaming platforms, they have an ad-supported tier. I mean, publishers like the Star Group and so on, there's content, news, entertainment without like a payment gateway and such. So people know that, and people are fine with how content, free content, works with advertising. But where we feel people feel a bit shortchanged, or where a bit of unhappiness or negative sentiment comes into play, when there is unconsented collection of certain data, which they are not allowed in the first place, or worst case scenario, like those collected personal data is being sold for different advertisers. So we feel like for AI or machine learning, when you're looking at top funnel, mid funnel kind of campaigns, awareness or consideration engagement, I think AI or predictive algorithms have already closed the gap. But currently in the industry, there's no doubt that these IDs that we are still using are really pivotal in like conversion campaigns. When you're looking at lower funnel campaigns, when looking at ROAS, these IDs are the ones that are driving the biggest efficiency. And that's where AI hasn't really caught up yet. I mean, that's where like content can come into play, like what Saya was saying, how we look at like different channels. And also we cannot forget like brands' first-party data. So that's something they've already collected over time. And that's not going to be depreciating anytime soon. So already having this first-party data that advertisers have, like how would they break it down? It could be device IDs, it could be email IDs, it could be phone numbers. And how do you kind of, you know, create like an omni-channel approach to go back to the personalized messaging? So when, I mean, it goes back to the same question that we started off with, like when IDs disappear, but we still want specific content, personalized message, curated message to a particular person without IDs. Content is one, which we just discussed, and also using your first-party data that you will hold to craft it in a very strategic way would be ideal for brands to utilize that.
Yeah, so we were talking about data privacy from what Sathish was saying, right? With the fact that we are going to cookieless and all that, with all the restriction, how would we manage the end-to-end customer retention? And how do we close the loop and customization issues and making sure that our customer experience is not impacted?
I think the most important is like what kind of value that we can provide to our customer. If able to provide some valuable, I think, offer to our customer, definitely they are willing to share their data with us. Yeah. For us, like we actually predict this happen. So it's getting like instead of rely on the party tools or this. Our company CGM actually we are building our own data pool. So in order we not just simply build like this and ask information from our customer. Yeah, definitely we have craft our product. We have craft a new offer to our customer so that able in order they want to enjoy all this benefit, all this offering from us, then they need to join our community, I would say. Okay. So this is how we're going to handle this situation. Yeah. But the key point is what's the value that we can provide to our customer. That's more important. Yeah.
Right. I think that's a really interesting point of view, Raymond, considering like, you know, we feel that by having the first party data, third party data, all the multiple sources of data will definitely help us retain customer better. But we do have other ways of doing it, like make sure that our services are up to mark as well, right?
True.
Yeah.
So we also somehow when it comes to data, we always have too many sources of data. So as a marketer, every time we come to implementation or execution, we always like struggle. What are the platform provide me the more accurate one? Or why this Bitly told me the traffic is like this, and then when it come to Google Analytics, it tell me this user traffic is like that. So why they are not telling? So so right now we are practicing is to streamline the data source so that we can have something that everyone can tally with. And then at the same time, we also always review on the accuracy of the data, because even though like Google Analytics is kind of like very what I call that reliable, but then somehow how we set it up also is very important. Yeah, are we setting the right event for the Google Analytics to track? Yeah, that's something that always questionable.
Thank you, Raymond. And I think for the rest of us, in terms of data privacy and making sure there's anonymity in terms of the kind of work, and as much as we would like to like assist our clients with the right information and customized information, we are very, very strict around that. And I'm sure, Salesh, when it comes to data privacy, is there anything else you would like to share with the panel and the team?
I think, as Raymond said rightly, that it's an ever-evolving situation. It brings back the aspect of inherent trust that an organization has, and I think the perfect example here would be pandemic has taught us. When it comes to contact tracing, when it comes to vaccination, disclosure, I think that's a data that we are all willingly abiding to, right? and there are no complaints. So that real value, unlocking that is something critical. Have we all, as an industry, found a solution for that? I don't think so. Of course, there are different schools of thoughts. Platforms have a very different philosophy, and if any of you have followed the Netflix, The Social Dilemma, it shines a light on where the distrust comes from. And I think a lot of work today is going within organizations. Even as an organization like Edelman, the amount of data-related training that we all go through in terms of privacy and stuff is critical. Whenever you are collaborating with an organization, they would really want to know how and to what level, because it's not just marketing data, right? It's they are opening a tap of wealth that an organization would painstakingly have amassed over a period of time. So XYZ, whatever the organization is, also wants to know how that data is being curated and then mined, and what are the ethical sides of things. And I think a lot of education that currently is happening is for us as communications and marketing people is on the ethical side of data. Unfortunately, right now, there is a lot of misconceptions around how the data comes by. We keep talking about the amount of databases that are leaked now and then. And as customers on the receiving end, you get those anonymous calls. So I think this is an ever evolving situation, but goes back to how an organization's policy on data is going to be, and how we're going to look at what Sathish and Raymond mentioned in terms of evolving practices on unlocking that value, so that I am willingly wanting to share my data with you as against a third-party source.
But I think our consumer here are actually quite open compared to some other markets. So I think we're probably in a luckier place than most comparatively.
Perhaps.
That actually, we actually have a couple of questions from the audience. I think we do have some time, if you don't mind making some time to actually answer it. I don't know if you're able to see what's on the screen right now. Let me read it out for you. Basically, the first question is, progressing to a cookie-less future, what alternatives are available to better shape customer or personalized experience? This is from Jin Su Chia. Yeah. Sathish, you might wanna.
And yeah, so on the cookieless bit, like we do have like different strategies. I mean, you'll probably hear in market. So Google is also having their own strategy where they call it Google Privacy Sandbox. That's work on cohorts and search browser history. TTD and publishers have a unified IDs. So there are different partners who have different solutions that's coming into market. So we still have up till mid next year when we expect like the full third-party depreciation to happen. So it's one more year at the moment that a lot of test and learns can be done. So how Teads looks at it is in two ways. Like one, when we look at no more identifiers at all, the content is key. So we see what people are particularly reading at that point in time. So it almost becomes like real-time moments targeting using contextuals. And then the other side of the story is what other signals that's available to us. That's where we use our translator tool. That's where once we cannot see any third-party cookie information, we start sourcing out or mining any other non-cookie based signals that we can leverage upon, which is still like user compliant. Like again, we look at the context, we look at the location, we look at the device, we look at which publishers they've been moving across. So this is how we are looking at it in that perspective in two separate ways. Like one, purely looking at the content and real time where the user is in that chain of mind when he's reading type of content. The other one is looking at all other signals that are non-cookie based anymore to see how we can map it. Again, it still goes back to our predictive indicators. It all happens with all the different data points that we have to look at probabilistic or deterministic data. So combining these two will be key. But again, it's going to be a test and learn process because, cookies have been around for like 15, 20 years. And if you're going 100% on the other extreme, you wouldn't be able to expect to achieve something that's now being tested as an A/B test, for example. So it's an ongoing process, and we and other partners are also in market, educating and evangelizing new types of avenues, that you don't lose audience base overnight, basically. So it's a 1-year process of learning and testing with the different partners that you have in market to ensure that you eventually reach a state where you won't be dependent, or a cookie-less future, as we call it, to continue with the activities that you're already doing now.
Thank you, Sathish. And how worried do you think we should be around this?
I mean, it was supposed to happen last year. So every year there is a pushback with Google. So it is a worry for with the industry as well, for all three, for like agency partners, advertisers, and DMPs or vendors like us as well. So when you see the market reactiveness or the preparedness is not there, that's where you see the pushbacks being happening. So hopefully, let's see when it's actually happening in mid next year, that will have a little bit more urgency from different parties of the industry to come together and see how we can have a more consolidated approach or more unified approach. But yeah, because of the moving timelines, there's no real urgency, or a lack of urgency within the industry. But it all depends as what time goes. It is still very, very reactive at the moment. But we want to plan for the future and make sure our different partners have the opportunity to test and learn different like availabilities that we have in terms of the different tools and tech that we want to provide.
Thank you, Sathish. I think we have one more question. We have enough time for one more question, right? So the question is from Lillian Yong, saying, how confident are you towards the accuracy of the AI audience segmentation? Look, I guess like for you, you're using it quite a lot. So
all right.
How much do you trust it?
For CGM, when it comes to this AI audience segmentation, we do apply one of these technique in our fraud controlling. For our business, like if we are selling all these digital product, actually quite high risk. Yeah. So we utilize this system is actually help us like reduce until like 0.4% fraud rate. So I think it's quite satisfied the number. But how confident in this case? We always have to double review it with like our manually. Yeah. So we need to cross check whether the actual result and versus the tools that provide the dashboard result. Yeah. So
still a bit of that human touch is required, right? So I think we're quite relieved to hear that as well, right? So it's a hybrid. Everywhere we're going to be looking at, it's going to be a hybrid for all of us, I think. We are almost coming to the end of our session. It's been an interesting day for us, and also very, very useful hour so far with all of you. Thank you so much. But before we close off, is there any other information that you want to share with the audience? Is there anything that might be left behind so they can have a bit of food for thought for today?
Let me do it.
Yeah.
This morning, there's one of panelists have shared one of the idea, which is just keep on lingering in my mind, which is welcome to data. Just we try to unlearn everything. Yeah, because data is just a piece of information at the end. Yeah, so how we analyze it, how we utilize it, how we implement this, I think is depends on the human.
Thank you, Raymond. I think that's really useful, right? I mean, unlearning is a good way to start preparing us for the future, right? We all going to be future focused and fit for purpose. And with that, I thank everyone again. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Salish. Thank you, Sathish.
Thank you all.
And we hope to see you in person soon in Malaysia, all of us together. And with that, I think thank you, audience, for listening to us. I'm going to pass this back to Myra.